Now I do suggest when you're cutting out tiny pieces with tiny scissors, don't wear gloves, because if you're like me, you'll end up cutting the end of your glove off. Hey, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts, and I hope you're doing okay. Now, I was having a look through Instagram recently, and something popped up on my feed that was about a jeweller that was in the USA, an award-winning jeweller, that I think laser engraves the back of her gems before they go into her pieces, and that gives a pattern throughout the gems. Now, it occurred to me, you know, we do the same sort of thing with inlays and resin. So why can't we do the same sort of thing with gem type things with the inlays? Now, to do this, I figured that we needed really tight, tiny patterns. And although I make tiny little silicone inlays, are they going to be the right sort of inlays to use with this sort of idea that I'm thinking of? I'm probably not explaining myself very well here, and throughout the video I know I've done some of these and some of them come out terrible, but it's a work in progress, and I need to figure out what it is I really want. And you're coming along with me. So whenever I've used inlays before, I've always used either heart-shaped or keychains, and it didn't occur to me to actually use an inlay behind a gemstone. So I have this mould. Now I will try and link this mould, but I've had it quite a while, and you know how things are. Some companies stop making them and you can't find them anymore, but I will try and put this link in. Now I need to make an indentation of one of the pieces that I'm going to use. So I've put a piece of paper over the top of the mould, and I've pressed around the outside edge to get an indentation for me to be able to cut with. Now you can do a rub with a pencil, and apparently that is called frottage, where you skim the pencil over the top of the line and it gives you the whereabouts the line is so you can cut it. Either way, I just need the outline of this particular area, and this is the way I've chose to do it. Now after a few little snips and holding it up to the mould to make sure I've got the right shape, I end up with a piece that will fit in the area. It does take a little patience, but as long as I've got the original shape in paper, then I'm not going to ruin the inlay that I'm going to cut to the same size. So this paper template is what I'm going to use. And if you cut it wrong, you've cut a bit of paper wrong and can get a new bit of paper. If you cut the inlay wrong, it can be a disaster if you don't have another one. And I make a paper template for each little gemstone area of the mould that I'm going to use. When I have my paper template, then it's time to cut out the silicone inlay that I'm going to use. I've tried to find as flat, detailed inlays as I can. I've got quite a lot of 3D type inlays. They're not going to work so well with this. I need flattish design with beautiful, intricate, minute detailing. And this little inlay is perfect. Now I do suggest when you're cutting out tiny pieces with tiny scissors, don't wear gloves, because if you're like me, you'll end up cutting the end of your glove off. There's absolutely no need to wear gloves with something like this, but for some reason I've got them on, so I kept them on while I was still cutting. I do end up taking those off because there's no point really. You end up losing a pair of gloves when you snip the finger off. So I'm trimming up the inlay the same size as the template, and it is not as easy to cut. The thickness of the silicone, however, is very important. The thinner the silicone, the easier it is to cut. And I just snip, snip, snip until I am happy with the shape. Now obviously these tiny inlays are going into tiny pieces, therefore you're going to need a lot of detail in a very small area, and that's another stipulation really. A lot of detail in a tiny silicone that is fairly flat. It's quite a specific thing, isn't it? Once I'm happy with the size of this little one, then I go on and make a few more for other cavities in this gem type mould. And now I have 6. Honestly, you could go on and make loads, but it is a little time consuming. On the other hand, once you've cut them for this mould, they're always going to be right for this mould. So it's ideal to keep them if you want to make more. This is where I start to add the resin. Now I'm going to do 3 different colours, red, blue and yes, green. The idea is that the resin is translucent. Now heads up, I already know the results of this. This is post-production, okay? I know that red is too dark. It really, really does need to be translucent. This is UV resin, but whatever resin you use, you need a tiny amount of colouring. Whatever colouring you use, you need a tiny amount. It has to be a fleck of colour so that you can really see through the translucent colour of the resin, but it still gives a colour. I had several attempts at this, and like I said at the beginning, there were occasions when I think this is not going to work, but it really is going to work if the resin is clear enough but still has colour. So I can't stress this enough, a touch of translucent colour. That's it. As this is UV resin, I've got rid of the bubbles, I've given it a flick with a long neck lighter, and now I'm going to add in my little detailed cuts. This is a seahorse, and as I said, the flatter the picture the better. Now even though this little inlay is quite flat, it does or will have areas where the silicone could hold air and make bubbles. And to negate that, I am going to cover it in resin first before I put it upside down in the UV resin. I just want no bubbles under there whatsoever and need this picture to be bubbleless. So when I'm happy with that, I turn it upside down and lay it on top of the UV resin. I'm going to do the same with the little cross design and actually the same with all of them. Now some of these pieces are just patterns. Doesn't have to be a picture, a pattern will work just as well. By the way, I just want to say a quick hello and welcome to all my new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed already, consider doing so. It doesn't cost a thing and it will definitely help my channel out. And if you have a mind to, don't forget to push that thumbs up button, because that will help YouTube know that you like watching my content and will push the video out so that others can see it. When I've got all the little inlays in, I pop the mould underneath the UV lamp and I let it cure for 5 minutes. This is the double-sided Let's Resin UV lamp. Perfect for this kind of thing. So once the UV resin has cured up, I'm going to remove the little inlays from the back. And once you can grab hold of them, they come off really easy. Little silicone inlays will float on top of resin. And as long as you don't push them down, there's not going to be any resin on top either. Taking them out is as simple as you can see. Pair of tweezers, grab the inlay, pull them off. And what you are left in the resin is amazing little designs. As I said, some of these are just patterns. Some are flowers. There's a cross. There's a yin-yang sign. I believe that's the yin-yang. And you can use any design as long as it's a shallow one and not too 3D. I've got little bears and skulls and all sorts, but they will not work in this. Now this is where it gets a little different. I'm going to use a chrome marker. This is the Let's Resin chrome marker. And I'm just going to highlight the raised edges of the design at the back. The idea with this technique is that you don't have a dual colour. It's literally highlighting the design of what you've put in there. Now, it is difficult sometimes to get this big, huge chrome marker into the really tight areas. It's not easy with a large nib in a small area. And if you manhandle the mould too much, it will lift the resin pieces out. So really be careful with how you're handling the mould. You need those pieces at this point to stay settled in the mould. As you can see, one of them actually tried to lift out, and I was very careful to put that back down, and hopefully it won't make too much of a difference. But I'm literally just running the marker across the details in different directions so that it highlights the detail of the inlay but doesn't colour it in too much. Now you can dry brush with white paint, you can dry brush with silver paint, as long as it is just one colour that can be seen from the front and will not be changed by the backing colour, because we're going to back this in black. I chose silver because I think it's going to be quite reflective at showing through the translucent resin. I'm using MB fiberglass polyurethane black resin. You can use whatever black resin you want. You can use 2-part epoxy. You can use UV black resin if you want. You can even take these outside and spray them black with aerosol with a spray can, a rattle can. I'm using polyurethane for quickness. I do think it's very quick, but you do have to be careful because it goes off so quick that it doesn't go off in the cup. If you're dilly-dallying with putting tiny bits in at once, you can have issues. And then we wait. Now we've only got to wait for about 30 minutes at the most. We can chill. We can do whatever we want. Have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and chill. So demoulding time is always fun. It's the best bit in my opinion. And it really has worked with this little piece. You can see it's just lines on this design, but it really does work. The black behind the silver just makes it stand out. The patterns are incredible. Now, as you can see with this cross, I did go over a little bit too much with the silver pen, and it's kind of detracted from the picture itself. But dry brushing, I think, with silver paint would work so much better. Or a chrome marker with a smaller nib. Moving on to the blue ones, and I think the blue ones really, really work. The translucent colour of the blue just makes the background look extra beautiful, in my opinion. The blue really worked. Actually, to be honest, the green did as well, but you know what I think about green. But it did work. The translucent colour of the resin is what you see as the back highlighted area. When it comes to the red, however, as I said earlier, it was far too thick. There was too much pigment in there, and because of that, you can't really see the design. Even though it's there, far too much colour in these two pieces. Though I do like red, but it just was too red. So I did actually go on to make a lot more variations of different patterns using different moulds. This is a gemstone pendant mould with a silicone inlay sheet cut up and used at the back. This is a faceted gem mould with a sunflower inlay in the bottom. And I actually think this is my favourite overall. It is so sparkly. This little blue shard type mould has just a random pattern piece in the bottom, but it definitely gives an amazing effect through the 3D resin. And this little turtle again has a silicone inlay in the shell area, but I did colour that a little too much. Again, with this gem mould, I did like the sunflower, so I tried again with blue, and this is just a spiral type inlay behind the blue resin. I think personally that this method has potential, a lot of potential. I think it needs a little bit of work to get the colouring on the back right, and maybe dry brushing with a paintbrush may do a better job than the marker. You definitely need translucent resin, and I just think the little sunflower wins my heart. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you've got something out of it. Come back and see me next week, because you never know what I'm going to be up to. I never know what I'm going to be up to. Have a great week, happy crafting, and bye for now.